Hello and welcome to this final Telemedia podcast, depending on how you're listening to it, before we take a little break for the summer. I'm Paul Skeldon, I'm the editor at Telemedia. I'm usually joined for these by my colleague Jarvis Todd, but he's out and about prospecting for our upcoming events in the second half of the year and early 2025. Can't believe we're already talking about 2025, but there you go. So we're going to do some interesting little bits and pieces about what's been in the news in the past 2 weeks since last we met through the medium of podcasting. And I was hoping for a quiet week. I thought I wouldn't really have very much to say, but it's been a couple of really interesting and significant developments just to give us something to mull over on our summer holidays. So without further ado, we'll dive straight in. So the first thing that happened last week, in fact, was that our friends at Democo Payments have done a deal with Deutsche Telekom and in Germany around carrier billing. So what? I hear you cry. But this is really interesting because Democo Payments and other DCB providers, notably Boku, both sort of working on this agent model. And what Democo's done with DT in Germany is Deutsche Telekom act now as a payments agent for Democo. Now, a payments agent, if you don't know, is really a sort of third party who collects payments for people. So they sit between the sort of sale of goods and the payment company. Usually used in the sort of high finance sort of markets for buying bonds and things like that. However, it's applicable sort of anywhere that payments are being made. Now, Telekom in Germany being a payment agent for Democo means that they can collect the money for services and things that are paid for, pass it back to Democo. Now, what happens is that by doing it this way, Democo can offer carrier billing as a way of buying stuff through Deutsche Telekom. Deutsche Telekom collect the money, pass it back to Democo. But what makes it really interesting is it sort of circumvents to some degree, or it works within, let's not make it sound dodgy, it works within European Union regulations, the PSD2 directive stuff, about how you can use carrier billing. Because carrier billing, as we all know, is limited to larger digital goods and ticketing, parking, those sort of quasi-digital things. Are limited to maximum spends of €50 per transaction and €300 per month and all that kind of thing. But doing it through a payment agent means you don't have to necessarily be constrained by those rules, which opens up carrier billing all of a sudden to being used for paying for physical goods and other things outside the scope usually of carrier billing. Now, we've talked about this many times over the past few years. It's been something that's been rumbling along and slowly taking shape, particularly in Germany. Our friends at Internet Q also do this. We've seen Boku also doing it. And it's starting to open up the market, particularly in Germany, for using carrier billing to buy things other than digital goods. And so it's starting to be used for, vending machines and stuff like that. The Germans have, in fact, used it to brand carrier billing. I shall attempt to pronounce it. It's a German phrase, Zahl einfach per Handyrechnung, which means pay by my phone, essentially. And giving it a branding, they put it up on stuff, they advertise it, and people can sort of buy things using carrier billing, physical things. Similarly, in Poland, Democo have worked with STS to allow carrier billing for placing bets on sports matches and tournaments and things like that as well. So again, not a physical good, but something totally outside of what we usually see carrier billing being used for. So, this is an important development. And I think sort of from the Democo Deutsche Telekom perspective, it's another step forward towards Germany really opening up to being a place where we can pioneer and see carrier billing being used to buy physical goods, which suddenly transforms its role therein. And interestingly, it coincides with a time when sort of consumers in Europe are sort of moving away to some degree from wanting to use sort of cards for payments. Obviously, you all listening, I do use Apple Pay and wallets like that all the time. However, which is essentially a card payment through a phone, tokenized and all that kind of thing. But really, it's sort of a shift in like consumer behaviour, and there is this shift in Europe in particular, away from wanting to use card payments. Some research by Juniper was out a while ago. I was digging around while I was sort of researching the sort of background to this story. Predicts that between 2023 and 2028, card-based payments are likely to fall from 71% to 57% of European e-commerce spend. So that's quite a drop in quite a short space of time, mere 5 years. And let's not forget 2028 is only 3 years away. So I think it seems a prescient move. Yeah, we are going to see consumers wanting to pay in different ways. It's not necessarily going to be a card payment. We are going to see all other alternative payment things like bank transfers. They're becoming increasingly popular, and of course carrier billing. And carrier billing can ride on the coattails of this shift, particularly through this payment agent model. So I think it's definitely one to watch over the coming months. To mull over the summer, I think, as well, because I think it does sort of change the sort of scope of what you can use carrier billing for, and it changes therefore the scope of those telemedia companies that offer carrier billing as to where they sit in the payments industry, which in itself transforms the telemedia sector. So very interesting one to watch. Like I say, we have covered this before. We talked a lot about it around a company called Internet Q, doing this also in Germany. Must be probably getting on for about a year ago. It is a slow burn. It's been rumbling on, but it is starting to sort of gain some traction. And this week, obviously, it's Democo Payments who are pushing it, who we've also talked about doing this before. So it's an interesting one to watch. And I think we'll see sort of more developments in this space, particularly in Germany. I think in many ways we get to see how this might work as a branded service in a market. What's also interesting about it, I think, is it's a lot of the stuff we talk about in this podcast and on the Telemedia website is around how payments in particular are being used in developing markets, particularly in MENA. And it's interesting how actually here in a very developed market, Germany, we're seeing an advance and some real progress in developing how we use something that's been around for 20, 30 years that we've been covering. So kudos to them. It's interesting to watch. I want to see how this sort of plays out in the weeks and months and indeed years ahead. Something obviously we'll be bringing up at World Telemedia in Marbella, hoping to speak to some of the people from Democo out there to find out exactly how this is going to work, what their plans maybe are to expanding it. And there's a lot we can learn from it. So one to watch, something to mull over while you're sitting on the beach. The other bit of big news this week, in fact, very early this week, it was just on Monday afternoon, Google announced that it is scrapping, to some degree, its plan to block the use of cookies on its Chrome browser. Now, we're all used to, I think, certainly here in the UK, I think it's pan-European. Every time you go on a website, you get a pop-up saying accept cookies, decline, etc. It's that's we've been moving towards this world where we've been trying to sort of, I guess, abolish cookies. They sit there behind websites, gathering sort of third-party data about how people use websites, what they're looking for, and the theory is that it helps target then web content advertising that's relevant to what people are looking at. It's become a bit of a bête noire. People like Apple certainly sort of blocked it in one of their iOS updates several years ago, and it's pretty much killed it in terms of Safari. You don't have to sort of use it, though you do still get the pop-ups. The big news was that Chrome, Google's browser, was also going to do this. Now the timeline has shifted and shifted and shifted, and it still hasn't happened. But on Monday this week, on the which would have been the 22nd of July. They announced that they weren't going to pursue this anymore. Now, the cookie debate's not dead. Instead, it's floated this idea that what it's going to do is build into Chrome an ability for the Chrome user to be able to sort of turn on and off, essentially, whether they get cookies or not. Hopefully, that obviates the need for these pop-ups. I suspect we're going to still see those for some time to come. The details about how Google replaces this idea of cookies are scant. There's not a lot that they've put out so far as to how this might work. They've just floated the idea that their privacy sandbox is the project to to get rid of cookies was called is still in play. It's going to look more at how to do that at a sort of browser level rather than an individual web page level. So that's an interesting development. What's interesting about it is that the world has been gearing up for the death of cookies, and because cookies sit there, little bits of software. You go onto a web page, come into your computer, look at what you're looking at, and feed that data back. Now, they're a blessing and a curse. They have made the web experience, I think, probably better, because I think without them, it would have been a free for all. The web would have just been a bombardment of advertising, all shouting at the user at once with no real sort of clear directions to sort of like what it was trying to do. I think at least this way we don't even notice, but we are getting adverts that, while possibly not spot on, are more attuned to what you possibly might be interested in than they may have been otherwise. I think they have been deemed annoying. They sit in your computer, they take your data. It does have privacy implications, sort of rise of being sort of concerned about user privacy, and people being concerned about their own user privacy has fueled a lot of the anti sort of cookie sentiment. But I think on balance, they've probably been a good thing. And for a lot of brands and brand marketers and media companies, they've been vital because they help tailor what the user sees. They help brands work out where to advertise, what to advertise, to who to advertise. They've been the kind of thing that sort of underpins the ability to target advertising, and have helped drive the sort of rise of personalization, which is the sort of nirvana for all marketers want to do that. For publishers, it helps target content, it helps understand who's looking at it, helps them sell advertising off the back of that. Cookies played a vital role, and the talk for, it's been 4 years. 2020, Google first announced this. For 4 years, all these companies, brands, marketing agencies, publishers, media companies have all been looking at how to get around this. Now, we talked some weeks ago about commerce media, this idea of sort of consumer-facing organisations that have vast amounts of first-party data about their customers are starting to sell advertising on their sites to leverage that. And that's very valuable. Part of that has been driven by this idea that cookies are no longer going to be sort of part and parcel of the world. So that's all been sort of rumbling along. So that's been part of the kind of drive to try and sort of push ways of gathering data about consumers to make the sort of advertising world easier. Cookies, played that role. For media companies, they've struggled to find ways to get to monetize content, essentially, and because they can't advertise around the right people. That's what's brought about the rise of paywalls and all that kind of thing. Now, not getting rid of cookies potentially means that those paywalls may yet disappear, because if publishers, media companies in particular, can start to use cookies to gather data, they can, up how they sell. They can combine that with first-party data that they can also glean from sort of a commerce media play, or by partnering with sort of customer-facing organisations like network operators and retailers, those sorts of things. They can build a really hyper-personalised way of doing this, which might make content monetizable, which might make more content free. It might actually get rid of paywalls. Now, that's a good and a bad thing, obviously, for telemedia. A lot of telemedia billing companies have built up good, healthy parts of their business around sort of paywall sort of monetization. The billing side, carrier billing, for instance, is used extensively in that. And so we might see that this death of paywalls might actually affect the telemedia industry, or the billing side of it, in that sort of possibly is something that's eroded. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer, because I don't, it's only just happened. The details are scant. Be interesting to hear from you guys out there in telemedia land what you think this might do. I think it has sort of huge implications for changing how the sort of advertising and marketing world works, because I think we're going to end up with this sort of more hybrid model now, where we are still using cookies, and we're using all the sort of first-party data and commerce media sort of ideas that we've come to develop around having to sort of factor in a world without cookies. So I think together we might actually end up in a much better, much more targeted way of addressing the way people use the internet surfacing content for them, surfacing advertising, surfacing ad content that's monetizable. It might, however, as I say, have a deleterious effect on paywalls, which could impact the billing industry. Yet to see. So, along with Democo and the carrier billing payment agents model, two very interesting things to ponder over the summer. Other things you can ponder over the summer is we're in the next few weeks, we've already started, we're publishing some explainer articles on the website covering everything from carrier billing to premium SMS to mobile virtual network operators to OTT messaging, CPaaS, all sorts of things are coming out. So for those of you who want to know more about the sort of fundamentals of the telemedia industry or at a loose end during August, do please check out the site. We'll do more certainly on what the impact of this end of the sort of cookie debate will mean. We'll be doing a lot more, obviously, about carrier billing and what the payment agents model means as we come out of the summer and start to see some of these things in action. Hopefully, the picture will be a bit clearer about both of them. But in the meantime, I'm off on my summer holidays. We'll be back, hopefully joined by my colleague, Mr. Todd. I imagine in early September. But in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for listening for the first half of the year. And I hope you've found it useful and enjoyable. Please do get in touch with any thoughts on any of the things we've covered. We're very interested to hear on what you guys think, because you're at the forefront of this and this is what really impacts you. So anyway, have a good summer, everybody. And it's been great talking to you, and we'll catch up again in September. Bye-bye.